Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rouse IAS Study Circle. Now, before starting today's discussion, there is an announcement for all those candidates who have cleared the preliminary examination of 2020. Now, we note that this time, the time between the preliminary examination and the mains examination has been reduced. And as such, without any delay, you should start focusing on the upcoming mains examinations preparation. Now, the focus areas of a candidate at this point of time should be revision and answer writing practice. And there should be special focus on the essay and the GS paper 4, that is ethics and integrity. Besides this, you need to practice more number of full length tests from the GS mains perspective, and also the focus should be on revision and answer writing practice in the optional subject. Now, for revision and answer writing and focus on essay and ethics, that is the GS paper 4, and also on important themes of the general studies mains examination, the Rouse IAS is inviting all of its current and ex-students as well as our DNS followers who have cleared the preliminary examination to start with the general studies mains test series and quality program for mains 2020. Now, how this program is going to help you? So first of all, it will help you in revising all the important themes for the upcoming mains 2020. And for this, there will be mains compass magazines, which are subject-wise compilations along with the quality improvement classes. Further, this program will help you in doing extensive answer writing in all important themes of GS paper 1 to 4 along with the essay papers in the QIP classes. And finally, it will help you in fine-tuning your answer writing approach through rigorous testing, sample answers, thorough evaluation, and personal mentorship from the teachers of Rouse IAS. Now, what are the features of this program? So it will include the answer writing and test discussions via live online classes of 100 hours. It will have 10 thematic tests and 12 GS full-length tests as well as 2 tests for essay. Further, sample answers will be provided which have been written within the required word limit. Also, there will be thorough evaluation and personal mentorship will be a part of this program. Now, there is a scholarship program for those students who have cleared the prelims of 2020, and it will be applicable to Rouse IAS's ex-students and the DNS followers only. Now, the course fee of this program is rupees 30,000, and the course is complimentary for all the current students of Rouse IAS who are enrolled in the batches for CSE 2020. So, under the scholarship program, those students of Rouse IAS and the DNS followers who have cleared the prelims can avail this test series and the QIP program at rupees 5,500 only. And to avail this discount, you can always go through the link that is provided in the description below. Now, this program has already started from today, so do go through the link that is provided in the description box and register for this mains test series and QIP program. So after this, let us take up the discussion of the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 27th October 2020. And the articles that we are going to discuss today are displayed on your screen. So let us start the discussion. And before starting the discussion of first article, you should take up this self-assessment test. Now, this article on page number 6 is related to the change in foreign policy approach of India and China with regards to the West Asia. And in this context, the global circumstances have changed drastically in the year 2020, and it is because of deteriorating US-China relations, and it is also because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the Ladakh crisis that happened between India and China. So in this background, the author says that these events are forcing a drastic change in the geopolitical approach of both India and China, who are now becoming more realistic in their foreign policy approach. So the author says that it is not just the Indo-Pacific region where the India and China are contesting for their own interests. However, they are also contesting with each other for following and pursuing their interests in the West Asian region. So in this regard, let us look at what has been India's approach with regards to West Asia and also what has been the Chinese approach. And finally, we'll look at the contrast in the approach of India and China towards West Asia in this regard. And these points can be used in answers relating to General Studies Paper 2 in the topic International Relations and particularly related to the West Asian region. So first, let us look at India's approach towards West Asia since the year 2014. Now, in this regard, the powerful oil-rich Gulf countries have been looking for alternative investment destinations. Now, initially, they were mainly focused on the Western democracies. And now these Gulf countries are diversifying their investments away from the Western countries. And they are looking for alternative destinations where they can invest. And as such, it is said that the powerful and oil rich Gulf states looked for investment alternatives away from the West in order to deepen their own strategic depth. And this has led to increased investments by the Gulf countries in India. Now, in this regard, we note that in the West Asian region, there are three main players. First are the Saudi led Gulf countries, second is Israel, and third is the Iran led countries. So, in this regard, it is said that while the engagements with Israel have moved steadily forward, and we note that India has been engaging with Israel on multiple fronts, India's approach towards Iran has lagged behind as compared to its approach towards the Saudi led Gulf countries and also the Israel. Now, India has not been able to make progress with Iran because of the fears of US sanctions. And this has significantly slowed down the pace of India Iran engagements. Further, what has decided the Chinese approach towards West Asia is the security of the West Asian region. And we note that initially America has played a key role regarding the security of the Gulf countries. However, now the China is trying to capitalize around the thinking in the Gulf that the American security safety net is not absolute. And in this regard, they need to invest more in the other countries. And as such, China, which is economically and militarily the second best country after America, has taken advantage of this. And it has been engaging with various Gulf countries as a security provider. Also, the Gulf countries are looking for alternative markets to sell their oil in the coming decades. And this is why India and China, which are one of the fast developing countries, are the obvious choices for these Gulf economies. Further, initially both India and China had a passive approach with regards to their foreign policy towards the West Asia. However, of late, this approach of both India and China has been changing, and they have become more realistic in their approach towards the West Asian nations. And in this regard, it is being said that China is no longer going to play a passive role, and it is also offering an alternative model for investment and influence in the West Asian region. And this approach of China of not playing a passive role in the West Asia can be clearly seen in the details that were out regarding the China-Iran deal worth $400 billion of 25 years. So this comprehensive partnership between China and So the intention of striking a comprehensive economic deal between China and Iran worth $400 billion of 25 years is an indication that China is no longer going to play a passive role in the West Asia. Further, as far as India is concerned, it has maintained a balanced approach in its approach towards West Asia. And in this regard, India's outreach towards the Gulf countries and the investments that have been made by the Saudi Arabia and the UAE in India is India's recognition of its economic realities. That is, India wants investments from the Saudi and the UAE-led Gulf countries. So the message of the article is that China is no longer going to play a passive role, and as far as India is concerned, it has moved away from idealism towards pragmatism and has countered or factored in the economic realities of the day in its approach towards the West Asia. And this is clearly seen in the India's outreach towards the Gulf countries and the investments that have been made by these Gulf countries in India. And all these changes have been because of the changing geopolitical scenario, because of the changing US-China ties, and also the COVID-19 pandemic. And in this regard, both India and China are pursuing realistic foreign policy approach towards the West Asia. So these are few important points related to the IR section which can be used in answers related to West Asia and particularly related to India and China's approach towards this region. With this, let's take up the next news article now. Now, this article on page number 6 is related to the 10th President of India, Dr. K.R. Narayanan. And today is the 100th birth anniversary of K.R. Narayanan. Now, in this regard, his term as the President of India is regarded as very important as far as the role of a president in the Indian democracy is concerned. Now, we note that the Indian Constitution does not provide any substantial powers to the President of India. and he is generally seen as a ceremonial head of the state. And this is because India is a parliamentary democracy where Prime Minister has the key role to play as far as the governance is concerned. And President is just the head of the state without any real executive power. However, during his term, Dr. K.R. Narayanan made sure that he used his powers that are available in the constitution properly in order to enhance the Indian democracy. So, in this article, we will look at the key role played by the former President of India, Dr. K.R. Narayanan, in enriching the Indian democracy and using the constitutional provisions to enhance the democratic credentials of India, and also establishing that the president has a key role to play in the governance of the country. And some of the points that we discuss here can be very important for us from General Studies Paper 2 point of view in the topic Constitution and Polity. Now, before we look at the key role played by Dr. K.R. Narayanan, let us look at the role and the position of President of India. So, in this regard, the Article 74 defines the powers of the President of India, and it provides for Council of Ministers to aid and advise the President of India. And in this regard, it states that there shall be a Council of Ministers with the Prime Minister at the head to aid and advise the President, who shall, in exercise of his functions, act in accordance with such advice. Further, the President may require the Council of Ministers to reconsider such advice, either generally or otherwise, and the President shall act in accordance with the advice tendered after such reconsideration. So, the only option that is available with the President is that he can make the Council of Ministers to reconsider the advice that has been provided by it to the President. So here we see that the President of India is bound by the aid and advice of the Council of the Ministers headed by the Prime Minister of India. And this indicates that the President of India does not have substantial powers as far as the executive functions of the government are concerned, although all the decisions by the executive are taken in the name of the President of India. Now, although the President has not been provided with substantial powers, it is the person who holds the position of the President who can use the powers or the limited powers that have been provided by the Constitution wisely. And they can be very helpful in enhancing the constitutional ideals in the Indian democracy. So let us look at the way in which Dr. K.R. Narayanan had enhanced the Indian democracy by using these provisions that are provided in the Constitution. Now, Dr. K.R. Narayanan was not just a passive president, however, he was active in social messaging. And he became the first Indian public figure when he was the vice president to shake hands with an HIV infected person. And because of the taboo attached with the disease of the AIDS, people generally stay away from the HIV infected persons. And in this regard, he broke this taboo and shook hands with an HIV infected person. So this was one of the important social messages that was brought out by Dr. K.R. Narayanan when he was a vice president. Second important role that was played by Dr. K.R. Narayanan was regarding the imposition of Article 356 or the President's rule in the Uttar Pradesh. Now, in this regard, the I.K. Gujral government wanted to impose President's rule on the Kalyan Singh government in the Uttar Pradesh. And when the government advised the President of India to impose the President's rule in the Uttar Pradesh, the President of India, Dr. K.R. Narayanan, reminded the government of the Bommai judgment or the S.R. Bommai judgment and the Sarkaria Commission recommendations regarding the imposition of Article 356 or the President's rule. Now we note that the S.R. Bommai judgment and the Sarkaria Commission had recommended a proper procedure for imposition of President's rule and had provided for restraints regarding the usage of the President's rule under Article 356. So in this regard, Dr. K.R. Narayanan had asked the Union Cabinet to reconsider this advice of imposing the President's rule in the Uttar Pradesh. So he was the first president who had asked the Union Cabinet to reconsider a proposed constitutional act. So this shows that the President of India is not just a passive position. And if a person holding the post of President uses wisely the provision of sending back the advice to the Union Cabinet, he can give a message to the public of India that the government of the day is not using its powers properly. And also, the President can remind the government of the day about their constitutional duties, as was done by Dr. K.R. Narayanan in the case of imposition of president's rule in the Uttar Pradesh government of Kalyan Singh. The second instance where Dr. K.R. Narayanan played an active role was with regards to the Tamil Nadu. And this was particularly related to the conduct of the governor of Tamil Nadu when the opposition leader and the former chief minister of Tamil Nadu was roughed up by the Tamil Nadu police. And this was done by the Tamil Nadu police at the behest of the then chief minister of Tamil Nadu. However, the governor of Tamil Nadu in that instance had remained a mute spectator and did not take any action on the chief minister of Tamil Nadu. So at that point, the President of India, Dr. K.R. Narayanan, suggested Prime Minister Atal Bihari to demand a report from the Tamil Nadu governor. And by doing so, the President of India reminded the government of the constitutional duties that are to be undertaken by the governor of a state. And this gesture of Dr. K.R. Narayanan to demand a report from the Tamil Nadu governor had led to the recalling of the governor of Tamil Nadu, M. Fatima Bibi. So in both these instances, the President of India, Dr. K.R. Narayanan, had put a restraint on the politics of the day. And also, he had reminded the governor and the governments of the day to clearly carry out their constitutional duties. So this shows that the position of President of India is not just a passive position. And if a person who is proactive holds the position of President of India, he can play a key role in making sure that the government is carried out on the constitutional values and the ideals that are present in the Constitution of India. Further, as far as his role in the foreign policy is concerned, Dr. K.R. Narayanan made his presence felt during the US President Bill Clinton's visit to India. And at that time, the President Narayanan reminded everyone of the non-alignment as an instrument of Indian foreign policy in pursuit of autonomy and independence. And we note that non-alignment was the policy that was pursued by India during the Cold War between US and the USSR. And the President of India had reminded the government of the day when that government was trying to align itself with the United States of America. So this was a clear reminder by the President of India that India had been pursuing a policy of autonomy and independence in its foreign policy through the principles of non-alignment. Further, after the 1999 Lok Sabha elections, a commission was set up to review the working of the constitution. And this was seen as an intention of the government to change the Constitution of India. And it was at that point of time that the then President Dr. K.R. Narayanan had warned the nation of inherent danger to the Constitution from narrow outlook towards the present Constitution. So this shows that he had reminded the public regarding the intentions of the then government of changing the Constitution altogether and reviewing the working of the Constitution through the committee that was set up. So all these instances show that although the President of India has not been provided with substantial powers, yet he can play a key role if he is proactive and uses his position properly and proactively. And this was clearly seen when Dr. K.R. Narayanan held the post of President of India. So in this regard, some of the examples that we have seen related to the life of Dr. K.R. Narayanan as the President of India can be used in writing answers related to the role of President of India in the Indian democracy. With this, let's take up the next news article now. Now, this article on page number 1 reads that India and United States of America are likely to sign the BECA agreement at the 2+2 dialogue today. Now, in this regard, we will look at the foundational defense agreements between India and United States of America and how many of them have been signed between India and US. And they can be important for us from General Studies Paper 2 point of view under the topic International Relations. Further, we will look at what is meant by this BECA agreement or the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement for Geospatial Cooperation, and also how it is likely to help India. Now we note that India is one of the important strategic partners of United States of America. And the United States of America requires its strategic partners to sign 4 foundational defense agreements to enable the strategic engagement, which includes the sharing of information, the technology transfer, and extension of logistic facilities. And these 4 foundational defense agreements are the GSOMIA, the BECA, the LIMOA, and the COMCASA. Now, we note that India is a major defense partner of the United States of America, and as such, it is imperative for India to sign these foundational agreements. And they will allow greater interoperability between critical technologies and smooth facilitation of classified information. Now, till now, India has signed three foundational agreements. The first one is the Logistic Exchange Memorandum of Agreement, that is the LIMOA. The second is the Communications Compatibility and the Security Agreement, or the COMCASA, and also the General Security of Military Information Agreement, or the GSOMIA. And as an extension to this GSOMIA, the Industrial Security Annexure was also signed recently. However, the only remaining agreement out of these four foundational defense agreements is the BECA, or the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement, is yet to be signed and is likely to be signed today in the 2+2 dialogue between India and the USA. So in this regard, let us first look at all these defense agreements and what is their importance for India. So regarding the General Security of Military Information Agreement, it is an agreement signed to safeguard the information that is shared during a technology transfer. So when the defense technology is transferred, it safeguards the information that is shared during such a technology transfer. Now, India had signed this agreement in 2002, and this covered only the Indian government and the public sector enterprises of India. However, the Industrial Security Annexure, or the ISA, which is an extension of the GSOMIA safeguards, has now been extended to the private sector during the technology transfer. Second agreement is the Logistic Exchange Memorandum of Agreement, or the LIMOA, and it was signed in 2016. And what is its importance? So its importance is that it will enable the access of each other's military facilities for the purpose of refueling and replenishment. So this marked a major leap forward in terms of defense relations between India and United States of America, because this agreement provided for refueling and replenishment of India and US's military facilities. So this was one of the important agreements. Third is the COMCASA, and it is the Communications Compatibility and Security Agreement. And it aims at safeguarding the information in the communication equipments in the weapons, for example, the precision armament, air-to-air, unmanned vehicles, fighter jets, space systems, and navigation systems. So the information that is transferred through the communication equipments in the defense equipments is safeguarded through the COMCASA, or the Communications Compatibility and Security Agreement. And it was signed by India and US in 2018. And the fourth and the last, which is likely to be signed today, is the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement, or the BECA. Now, it is a proposed agreement between the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency of the US Department of Defense and the Defense Ministry of India. And this will allow India and the US to share military information, which will include sensitive information like the maps, the nautical and the aeronautical charts, commercial and other unclassified imagery, and also geophysical, geomagnetic, and gravity data. Now, this is very important in terms of. So this agreement will help in sharing the military information related to the maps, etc., which is a sensitive information between the two nations. Now, most of the information that will be shared will be that of unclassified category, that is, which is not a secret. However, there is a provision of sharing classified information, which is a secret. However, it will be shared with proper safeguards in place. And this will ensure that any information that is shared through this agreement is not shared with any third party. So this Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement is a very important defense agreement between India and United States of America, because it will help in getting the military intelligence information related to the maps, commercial and unclassified imagery, and also geophysical, geomagnetic, and gravity data. And it also has provisions of sharing the classified as well as unclassified category of data between the two nations. So now, what are the likely gains for India from this agreement? Now, this agreement will allow the US Armed Forces to provide India with advanced financial navigational aids, also geospatial intelligence, and by getting such information, it will help India in improving its military's accuracy of the automated hardware systems and weapons, for example, the cruise missiles, the ballistic missiles, or the drones. Further, BECA will also help India and United States of America to counter the growing Chinese influence in the Indo-Pacific region. So this will strengthen the quadrilateral security dialogue, and also it will help India at a time when India is engaged with the Chinese army in the Ladakh region. So, as the BECA has provision of sharing intelligence information related to navigation and maps, etc., it will help in improving the accuracy of India's automated hardware systems and weapons, and will also improve India's efficacy in countering China. So, we have seen that India has already signed three important defense agreements, however, it was yet to sign the BECA. And this BECA agreement is likely to be signed between India and US today in the 2+2 dialogue. So these are few important points. They can be important in preliminary as well as mains examination. With this, let's take up the next news article now. Now, this editorial on page number 6 is related to the grey listing of Pakistan by the Financial Action Task Force. And this issue is a recurring issue and has been discussed in detail in the DNS of 24th October 2020 and also in the DNS of 14th October 2020. And this has been covered particularly from the preliminary examination perspective. So do go through these videos and try and understand the basics of the Financial Action Task Force and what is meant by the grey list and the blacklist. So with this we conclude today's discussion. These are the answers for the self-assessment test. And after this, let us take up the question for the day.